This thing that we covered last night with the ridiculous Trump deposition that gave rise to 100 million hilarious fruit-related headlines today. And this deposition he gave where he said that you could be killed if somebody threw a tomato at you, that's a lethal threat that must be met with maximum force. I mean, that undoubtedly was hilarious. It's ridiculous. But that came in a deposition in a case where Trump is trying not to be held accountable for his security guards beating up protesters. Now, the clear impression from the way he talks about protesters is that he would like for people protesting against him to be beat up. That would give him pleasure. He has talked about how that makes the threat of beating up anti-Trump protesters makes Trump rallies, in his words, more fun. He would like to be able to do that. Well, how do you get to do that? How do you get away with something like that? Hype some non-existent threat beyond all recognition to justify and provide a pretext for it, for whatever extreme thing you want to do and get away with. If you want to beat up protesters against you because you enjoy that, you find it fun. But the worst thing anybody can say about the threat posed by those protesters is that one of them once was rumored to have a tomato? Well, describe a tomato as a lethal threat then. Anybody protesting against you is a lethal threat and therefore deserves maximum force. It's the same tactical pattern over and over again, right? Lock her up, right? Lock her up about Hillary Clinton. Why? What was the ostensible reason they were going to lock her up? Because she used her personal email account when she was working at the State Department. Yes, that's it. And that is such a threat to the very foundations of America that she must be locked up. She must be jailed for that. She should be executed for treason for that. I mean, never mind that it's impossible to find anybody in the Trump administration who didn't use their personal email while they worked in government. Never mind that Trump literally trucked boxes of highly classified material to Mar-a-Lago and left it laying around at his golf club. There isn't actually a real concern about the handling of classified information or government material, like being stored or handled improperly. There isn't a real perceived threat here. But if you can talk about that threat as if it's the worst thing in the world, well, then you can use it as a pretext for what you want to do. And so if what you want to do is jail your political opposition or maybe have them killed, well, hype some non-existent threat that you attach to them beyond all recognition to justify that. That's how you build yourself the pretext you need. Voting fraud. Actual voting fraud is like a handful of old Trump-supporting white men in the villages in Florida and in New Hampshire and Ohio, all voting twice for Trump because they thought no one would notice. I'm just picking those cases out of a hat because those happen to be the ones top of mind, but those are also all the voting fraud cases that have broken in the last few months. You take that invisible, infinitesimal, totally non-consequential threat and turn it into a mechanized million-strong cabal using, like, South Korean planes and Venezuela and Italian satellites and Jewish space lasers. And pretty soon, voting fraud is the end of America, which surely is enough to justify what it is you want to do in the first place, which is stop abiding by actual election results, take and hold power by force and insistence. Voting fraud is so extreme, we definitely need martial law. Really? Well, if you make voting fraud into an existential threat, then you can justify anything in response to that threat. This is not something we invented. This is not something the Trump era invented. I mean, Russia invaded Ukraine in February, telling the Russian people it was because Ukraine was a military threat gearing up to attack Russia. Really? Russia is 3,000% larger than Ukraine. That's like saying the town of Putney, Vermont was going to invade Mexico, or that Aruba was going to invade China. But still, make the claim. Find a threat, invent a threat, or find one somewhere, and hype it beyond comprehension. Neutralize the bizarreness of that supposed and overhyped threat. Neutralize the bizarreness of it through propagandistic mass repetition, and bingo. Lock her up. The press is the enemy of the people. Ukraine needs to be demilitarized and denazified. Invent a threat out of whole cloth, or take the smallest thing in the world and blow it up into something incomprehensibly massive. And bingo, you have the pretext for anything that you want to do. The time that we are in is the overlap in the Venn diagram between stupid and scary. You are here. This kind of tactic that we are seeing against the press, against voting, against political opponents, it is a tactic that is not new. It is a tactic that we did not invent in this country. But if we can see it more clearly, if we can get more fluent about it in talking about it amongst ourselves, one of the things we will quickly learn is that we can turn to our advantage the learned experience of the people who have gone before us and faced it and fought it before we have had to.